my voice, there is not anything in your life, there is not anything in your life that God cannot fix and make new. Sometimes Christians do funny things without thought. It has nothing to do with the Spirit, it just has to do with the vessel. And so, what I need to tell you tonight is that although you have felt forgotten, you are not forgotten. You've been hidden, and you're here on divine purpose. Declare a thing, and it shall be established. But it doesn't say declare a good thing, and it shall be established. It says declare a thing. And so many times, I think what we're desire to march with us, we want you there. Not only do we want you there, we need you. We need you. You fill a place that is void without your presence. What I remember most about being a cop is, the SWAT pager going off in the middle of the night and the way that it affected my wife. I was in business mode. It's the way I always put it to people. There's people who run to danger and there's people who run from danger, and the people who run to it are typically the cops. The people who that's just that they're cut from a different cloth. They're made in as a protector. There were two people who went out on those calls for my family every time I went out. One was me, who suited up and went out, and the other one was the one who suited up and hit her knees and prayed. But I'm thankful. I'm thankful. Thankful for that I got to go home. I'm thankful that my wife still has her husband. And I'm also thankful for the sacrifice of the families and of the men and women who didn't have that privilege. I used to be a detective sergeant and a SWAT team member. Some of you may know that, most of you probably don't. That was what I did. I was actually a minister and a cop, and it was just kind of a interesting paradigm. But yeah, I was a detective sergeant, and on one particular day I got a call from a local church that also had a drug rehab program. They had a couple of guys that had broken out the night before and had done some things that they shouldn't have been doing. One adult, one juvenile, one 18, one 17-year-old, doing some things they shouldn't have done. And they caught them. So they called up to the sheriff's office, and because I recognized the name of the pastor whenever they called in, I took the call. I was the responding detective. So I went out, talked with these young men, and interesting point that I didn't point out in the first couple of services. When I walked in, these pastors were just, this one right here is just horrible, and he's a bad seed. And I mean, they were speaking all this horrible stuff over these guys. And it made me angry. I was always the guy that would reach out to these young people and try to bring them in. I was the guy that when the gangbangers would, have a death, one of the guys would get shot, I would go down into the hood and talk to them and ask them how they were doing, and that was my reputation in my hometown as a police officer. And so when I heard them doing this with this young man, particularly the one that ended up attacking me, I got angry and I pulled them out of that environment, took them to my office, and they begged me, please help us, officer. We've made a mistake. Will you please help us? And I said, absolutely. If you will go with me, you will show me what you did, where you did it. We will make this right. We'll make it good. And the whole time I'm out with them, I cuffed them in the front, which was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that, but sitting on handcuffs hurts. And so I figured after a while they probably would be hurting. So I went ahead and cuffed them in the front. I let my guard down. And as it so happened, while I was out of the car talking with one of the victims, they decided that they were going to try to kill me. Now, it's kind of interesting because I literally had spent the last 45 minutes ministering to these two young men, talking to them about changing their life. And, the one sitting in the back seat, he said, you're right, officer, I need to change my life. We've made some decisions that are bad. I said, but you haven't done anything that's going to get you locked up the rest of your life. So make some good decisions now. And what I didn't know is at the time I owned a construction cleanup business, and one of my trailer hitches was under one of my seats in my patrol car. I didn't know it. And while I was driving, it slid out. The guy in the back seat saw it and sat on it. He shoved it underneath of his seat and sat on it. I got out to talk to one of the victims, and when I came back in, while I was out, they had conspired that they were going to hit me in the temple, kill me, dump me out in the street, and take my car, steal my car, and run. So we got up over a hill. Apparently what they had conspired to do happened. The guy sitting next to me pointed off to the left and said, yeah, right over there. And I looked, I said, over there, and I turned back. And when I turned back, I got hit square in the face with that trailer hitch from the back seat. He swung full steam and hit me in the face. He was aiming for my temple. Shattered my nose, knocked my teeth out. I think we may even have a picture that's coming up here. But, yeah, and that's after stitches and everything else. My lip was split almost all the way through. It's a kind of a interesting thought looking at the picture. I'm reminded, I had my nose reconstructed that year already. my teeth fixed that year, and so it kind of a funny thought. Literally the first thing I thought when I spit my teeth out was, man, I just had those things fixed. That's the truth. It's funny the way your brain works, but that's honestly what happened. Oh, man. So as it happened, he hit me, and it didn't even knock me out. I blacked out for a minute, but then when he realized that he hadn't killed me and hadn't even knocked me out, he jumped over the seat and started strangling me, and then he went for my gun. I had to fight for my gun. Ended up getting out of the car, calling for backup, and when I got out of the car, the young man that was in the back seat jumped in the front seat.
Mm-hmm. And you went Arnold on him.
I went Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, that's the trifecta. We've got 3 different super
I said Bruce Willis in the first service.
Rambo the second service, and now Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No, he jumps on the hood.
I jumped on the hood of the car, which really, honestly, is very stupid.
Yes.
I don't recommend anybody do that. I had intended, honestly, to shoot the driver if he put the car in gear. But what happened was that the car was already in gear. My concern was I was on the SWAT team, and I had a machine gun in the trunk. And it's amazing how quickly your brain thinks of things in an emergency situation, kind of like spitting your teeth out and going, oh, I just had those fixed. Your brain just does things. And my immediate thought was, I've got a machine gun in the trunk, and if he gets my machine gun, he can hurt some of my guys. Yeah. One of my guys pull him over. They've got my car. They've got a machine gun. They're outgunned. So I jumped on the hood. They took off with me on the hood. I went silver surfing. And as it happened, about probably 150, 200 yards up the street, they're trying to shake me off driving up, and I decided I either had to shoot the guy or jump. And I decided to jump, which was probably a very wise decision. Had I shot him, he may have stepped on the brakes. I would have got run over. It would have been real ugly. But so I jumped off the hood of the car. When I did, I hit my head and busted both my inner ears. Now, for those of you who know anything about your inner ears and their function, all of your balance is taken care of with your inner ear. So as it happened, I had to go through months and months and months of vestibular rehabilitation. For those of you who might be able to remember back to that season, I would stand right here with my world spinning. Literally, I would look up at these lights, and the lights would be spinning and everything, and I would turn my feet in and raise my hands, talking about praising through your adversities, Pastor Danny. I would turn and just weep. I didn't know. I mean, is this my reality? Is this my lifelong reality from here on out? And I was going to praise anyway, and I did. And I praised through that, and I'll be honest with you, I determined early on to forgive and to release this, but I never had the opportunity, Pastor, to speak to the young man who did this. Now, the other one that was in the car, I was able to speak with shortly thereafter, but I've gone 4.5 years without speaking to the man who actually did the most damage to me. And about 2 weeks ago, I got a call from the district attorney's office, and they said, hey, guess what? He's up for parole. Got an 18-year sentence. He's been in for 4.5 years. He's up for his first parole hearing. And so I went in to speak with the parole board as the opposition. Opposition, meaning that you go in there and you basically tell them why he's not eligible to come out and why you don't think he should come out.
And if it's a crime against an officer, usually that officer can keep them in there for the full.
I could have very easily, if I'd wanted to be vindictive or angry or hold some kind of a grudge over him, I could go to every one of his parole hearings until his 18-year sentence is up and probably could have convinced the parole board not to let him out. I know enough about him personally that I could have made them afraid for him to be their neighbor. You understand what I'm saying? That's the if I wanted to, I could have been a real jerk about it. But I didn't go in there with the intent of convincing or manipulating the board to accomplish my desires. That wasn't my intent. I wanted to speak to the kid. I wanted to look him in his eyes. And so it was funny because I walked in and they called for the opposition. They say, okay, opposition, this is your chance to speak. And so I look at the parole board and I said, I understand that y'all are thinking that as the opposition, my position is going to be opposing him to get out or not. I said, I don't care if he gets out. To me, that's irrelevant. I don't have any jurisdiction in this place. I told him, I said, my jurisdiction ended when I crossed that razor wire. I said, this is your house. I said, if you feel like he's ready to release, that's fine. I said, but I have something that I need to say. And so they were like, now they wanted to hear it. And I looked at the young man and I said, listen, I said, what you have done to me, your choices have cost me a lot. It's cost me a career. I'm medically retired now. I lost my career. I was Officer of the Year in just a few years as an officer. I was a detective sergeant. I was on the SWAT team. I did all of that in 4 years of being a cop. And I told him, I said, you've cost me my business that I built. You've cost me my career that I built, the money, the insurance, everything. You've cost me this for the past 5 years. The 5 years that you've been in here, 4.5 years that you've been in here having to look at these walls, I've had to look at my life that you ruined. Your choices made this happen. And I looked at him and I said, so I say that for this. I want you to know that when I tell you I've forgiven you, I forgive you of much. I said, I release you from this. You don't owe me anything. And I began to speak life. And I said, furthermore, I said, God has a plan for your life. And if you will embrace that call, if you will do what God has orchestrated for your life, that you will accomplish great things, that your life doesn't have to be defined by this past season. This doesn't have to be defined by prison. You don't have to be the inmate the rest of your life. You don't have to have been the convict the rest of your life, but you can make choices that can change your destiny if you will choose. I told him, I said, I had the same conversation with you 4.5 years ago, and I'm saying it to you again. If you'll make the choices, you don't have to be defined by this reality the rest of your life. Pastor said earlier, hurt people hurt people. What I have come to recognize in all of this is that not only do hurt people, but I was thinking about that saying last week, remembering everything that just transpired in jail. And I realized that, I believe that the Holy Spirit said to me, Aaron, also healed people heal people. Mm-hmm. You see, I've been healed. And because of that healing, I'm able to speak into a young man's life who otherwise has had nothing but death spoken over him. Even when I first met him, the first words I heard spoken of him were death words. But I was able to speak life in the midst of a death situation, in the midst where he's had nothing but negative things said. So healed people, those of us who have been healed, have been commissioned also to heal people, free people, delivered people, deliver people. Mm-hmm. You see, that's something that we have as a heritage in Christ. And so it was interesting to hear as I walked out the doors, they unlocked my door. As I'm walking out of this place, the young man had remained silent the entire time. As I'm walking out, you're released as the opposition, you can go. They unlock the door, I'm with the correction officer, they unlock the door, and I hear from behind me, Detective Davis. I stop and I look. He says, thank you. And I walked out. As I'm walking out of the jail, I reached the razor wire that I had to come through to begin with, and the CO that was with me, assigned with me all the day, he turns to me and he actually kind of looks down and he goes, I know a lot of people wouldn't understand why you just did what you did, but I get it. It was what he did. And I said, he? He goes, Jesus. He goes, they didn't deserve his forgiveness, but he forgave them anyways. Yeah.